This is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Abraham became the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel of the Aramean from Paddan Aram, and sister of Laban the Aramean. And that's what we talked about last week, Isaac getting a wife. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayers, and his wife Rebekah became pregnant. The babies jostled within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red, and his whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out, with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Well, my clicker doesn't seem to be working again. We began last week. I kind of introduced or kind of reminded you of the Old Testament patriarchs, those early characters in Genesis that were kind of the leaders of God's people as God was beginning the process of creating a people, calling Abraham and telling him that he would be the father of great nations. And then last week we looked at Isaac and talked about how he got his wife. And so then today we are going to look at Jacob. So apparently my clicker's coming in and out. So we need a click, Rosalie. Today we're looking at Jacob. And we're going to do that by going to the scripture where we left off. Genesis 25, 19 to 23. Genesis 25, 19 to 23. Well, that part was read earlier, so I'm not going to read it again. But I do want to give you some background on a thing called the birthright custom, because it's important to the story and it's not the way we practice it today. So the birthright had to do with, like we have wills and inheritance and those kind of things, but their custom was different than ours. Basically, the oldest son this is giving me fits. The oldest son inherited a larger share of the estate than the rest of the family. And they did that by like 1 part. So it depended on the number of sons. And, I know that in our modern world we like to say children instead of son because it's, kind of sexist. But their culture was sexist. So, it was son. The daughters didn't get anything. So the oldest son inherited the larger share. So if there were 2 sons, they would split the estate 3 ways and then give the oldest son 2 shares. And if there were 5 children, they would split it 6 ways, give the oldest son 2 shares, and the rest would go 1 share. But there was also responsibility that came with that. The oldest son is the one who had to kind of take over the family business or the family farm. He became the head of the house. If his mother was still living, he became responsible for taking care of her. And so then the other sons, they were free to kind of try to move on and get their own farm, do whatever. But the eldest was responsible, and that's part of the reason why he got the larger share of the estate. So that's the way that the birthright worked during this era at this place when we're talking about Isaac and his sons. So Isaac and Rebekah had 2 sons. And so here we have an artist's rendition of mom and dad watching their boys. And over on the left side, we have Esau, which was the oldest son. He's the one that came out red and hairy. And so then we have Jacob. He was the other son, and he came out not so red and hairy. And he was holding on to the heel of Esau. And so those names, like Esau, kind of has the meaning of red, and Jacob kind of, like grasper. He was the one who was grabbing Esau's heel, and so they're kind of named after their birth situation. But I want you to notice the next couple of verses, Genesis 25, 27, and 28. It tells us a little bit about them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And so, to Isaac's discredit, he had a favorite, and it was no secret. And so this particular artist has indeed tried to kind of show the difference between these 2 boys. We have Esau. You can't see it probably, it's too small, but if you look, his arms and legs are all hairy, and there he is with his bow heading out to do some more hunting. That's how Esau was. And there's Jacob. We're told he liked to stay amongst the tents and hang out with his mom, and there he is. Looks like maybe he's cooking or preparing some food that he likes to do. And so what we get from these 2 verses is that Jacob and Esau were very different. They weren't alike in any way, and the prophecy had said that they were the beginning of 2 nations, 2 different peoples. So some people ask, we think of all the stuff that happens in Israel, and whose land is it, and you've got the Israelites and the Palestinians and this, that, and the other, and the Arabs. Well, here's the way it works. Jacob and Esau, the forefathers of those 2 people groups. And so to this day, they're different as they were then. Let's move on then to Genesis 25, verses 29 to 34. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." This is why he was also called Edom, which means red. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is the birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then he got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. And so again, we have an artist's rendition of Jacob and Esau trading off the birthright for this bowl of soup, or lentil stew. In fact, what kind of puzzled me is when Jacob said, "First sell me your birthright," he may have expected Esau to attach some big price to it. It was Esau who suggested, "Just give me the soup, that'll be enough. Or give me some stew, that'll be enough." So the question comes up then, kind of like last week, what does this ancient story about ancient custom of birthrights teach us? This is not what we do. This is not the way our system works. Kind of a bizarre situation. And so you ask, well, what's this got to do with us? What can we learn from this? Well, fortunately, the writer to the Hebrews helps us out with this. So we're going to go to Hebrews chapter 12 to the 16th verse. And I'm not even giving you sort of a page number, I'm just going to show you what's there. This is what it says. See that no one is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. So that's how the Hebrew writer applies this. See to it that no one is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. What we have here is the idea that Esau's values and priorities got him labeled as godless. Think about that. His values and priorities, I want this stew now, I'm hungry. Traded it for his birthright. All of the privileges of being the older child, traded it away because he wanted stew now. So what were his misvalue or his mispriority? When you kind of genericize it, he valued and prioritized the immediate, the temporary gratification over long-term lasting blessings. So he's got this long-term rest of his life blessing and privilege and responsibility. And he said, I would rather have a bowl of soup now than have that later. And that misvaluing, misprioritizing is so bad, the writer of the Hebrews gave him the label godless. It's like, to have those kinds of values and priorities, it's like you just ignore God. It's like, God has given you, these things, and you just kind of thumbing up at them. So that idea of valuing the immediate temporary gratification over long-term lasting blessings is being godless. Well, let's refresh our memories. 3 weeks ago, we looked at 1 John 3:1, and we talked about the idea that we are called children of God. And because we are children of God is why we're called that. It's not just a false label, but God, we talked about God lavishing his love on us. Remember the big dump truck? You were here. God loving us enough to make us the children of God and giving us that title. Well, this morning I want to point out that because we are children of God, we have a birthright. Not like Esau's birthright, but a birthright. We have privilege attached to our being children of God. Things like being able to have a right relationship with God. Things like eternal life. Heaven. Anyone ever heard of heaven? A couple of you have. Oh, there's a couple more. Having the Spirit in our lives. And God working in us and through us, all of those things are part of our birthright. Those are things that we are given because we are children of God. It's part of our privilege. Meanwhile, let's look at the stew that the world offers. Instead of a literal bowl of soup, the world offers us stuff, for one thing. And by stuff, I mean your possessions. Your house, your car, your jewelry, your money, all of those things. Your toys, boats and campers, and on and on and on it goes, bicycles. The world can give you all that stuff. Popularity. There are ways to be popular, and there are things that make you not very popular. And the truth is, kind of upside down from what they ought to be. Entertainment. The world offers tons and tons of entertainment. Security. There are ways to seek security. Let me just tell you, from the worldly perspective, every dollar that you give to God through the church could be going into your retirement account, which would be more secure. Well, from the worldly perspective, giving other people money, assisting others, giving money to church, well, that's just foolishness. You'd be more secure if you hung on to your money and invested it properly and so on and so forth. Comfort. Being able to be comfortable. Pleasure. And the list could go on. But those are things that the world offers you, and they're all temporal. That is, these are all things that are short-term, because they don't last forever. There's a lot of biblical, like you think you have your money saved up and it's invested well, and then the stock market crashes, and where's your money? It's gone. And so the idea of all of these things, the person who is cheating on his wife with the secretary at work, he's getting some pleasure out of that. It always goes sour in the end and creates problems and hardships and trials and troubles. And these things are all temporary. So the question becomes, would you trade your eternal spiritual birthright for the temporary stew offered in this world? So think about it like that. Instead of a bowl of stew for your birthright, God is offering heaven, a relationship with Him, and all of those things in exchange for the things that the world is offering. And how many people have chosen to take the stew offered in this world and give up what God is offering, the eternal things that really last? And remember that making the wrong choice got Esau labeled as being godless. See, you can't really do both. They don't fit together. And I'm keeping this short today. Missionary Jim Elliot was once called a fool for risking his life as a missionary to a dangerous and hostile tribal group. So Jim Elliot tells his friends and church members and so on and so forth that God is calling him to be a missionary and go and spread the gospel to this particular tribe in South America. And they tell him, oh, we've heard about that tribe, and there were some other people that went and it didn't go well, and you're a fool to leave what you have here and go off to South America to be a missionary to that tribe. And after hearing that, before he left, Jim Elliot wrote in his journal, and you probably can't read that. I can read it from here, but to make it easy for you, I've transcribed it for you. He is no fool who gives that which he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose. Think about the wisdom there. That's exactly what we're talking about with Esau. Esau gave what he couldn't keep, the stew. It was going to be gone. He was going to sit down and eat. In 20 minutes, it's gone. And he was going to give it for that which would have been for the rest of his life. And as Christians confronted, or as people confronted with eternal choices, we can take the things of this world and pursue them, or we can choose to pursue the things of God, which you can't lose. I had a church member once, the first church I pastored. I was young and bold and brash. And one of my people started missing a lot of Sunday morning services. And I went to him one morning and said, Steve, that was his real name, I'm not going to tell you his last name. I said, Steve, you've been missing a lot of church lately, and your wife is coming with your child by themselves, and she tells me that it's not going well. And he says, well, let me tell you, Pastor. He said, I'm highly driven. Last month I was Airman of the Month here on the base. And he said, there are some things, like I don't have to polish my shoes every day. But I polish my shoes every day. Because I have to. And I have, and I just need to devote my life to the military. Because I want to be number one, and I want to get promoted, I want this. And he said, but I thank you for coming, I'm going to pray about it, think about it, I'm glad that you talked to me. He messaged me by phone, called me, we didn't have texting back then, and said, Pastor, I just want to let you know, you're not going to see me at church anymore, I've made my mind up, I'm giving my life to the Air Force. Traded away. A few years later, he's divorced and so on and so forth. Traded away what he could have had forever for success in the Air Force. And by now, based on ages, I'm sure he would be retired if he stayed in. But he was kind of like Esau. Traded away eternal things for temporal things, made him godless. So here's my wrap up. Don't be like Esau. Be like Jim Elliot. Let's pray.